Welcome to today's episode of the Promo Playbook by Cubic Promote. And if you've been following a few of our episodes, thank you so much. If and when you have a moment, please do subscribe to our channel. Today, I have a lovely guest, Nathan, my good friend Nathan from Realtime Marketing Result. He's a marketing whiz joining me with our podcast today. Nathan, did you want to chat a bit about yourself, how you got into the marketing business and a bit about your business?
Yeah, thanks, Charles. Thanks for inviting me onto the show. Well, where I started was back in corporates. I started out in a large corporate business working for one of the big petrol companies here in Australia. And they worked a lot with agencies. So they had a number of different media agencies and marketing agencies that would do all their ad creative and figure out where they were spending their money and what sort of campaigns to run.
So let me get this right. So petroleum companies, even they need to market themselves. So it's not a product that sells itself.
To a degree, yeah, definitely. Yeah, because it's a very competitive market. There are probably 4 or 5 big players in the market. There certainly were back when I was there.
So we talk about the Caltexes, the Ampols, and the Shells.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And then obviously the 7-Eleven were in there with Mobil. So yeah, a lot of competition in the market. There's also Puma as well that were in the market too. So a lot of competition. Obviously, it's a product with a very big need. So when there's a big overwhelming need for a product, it certainly sells better than otherwise. But yeah, definitely a need to sort of differentiate in the market and make sure that the customers are shopping there instead of the competitor down the road. And obviously competing on price is a really big part of that industry. So you need to differentiate yourself, and the way they advertise the market was the channel to do that.
I truly never knew. In fact, this is deviating from our script a bit. Tell me a bit more about marketing for a petroleum company, because in my mind, if I go to Shell, I always expect the quality to be the same as Mobil. Is there a perception or is there an ability from a marketing perspective to make a certain petroleum company seem a high grade of product compared to a different petroleum company?
Certainly in terms of the premium fuels. So there was certainly an emphasis on the additives that were used in the premium fuels and telling the story around that. I think that was really important, something that they emphasised quite a lot. And then also it's advertising that resonates with a particular audience. So you'd map out your different buyer personas and figure out, okay, well, what do we need to say that's going to resonate with a truck driver as opposed to a parent that's driving their kids around during the week. So being able to build that sort of affinity with the brand and build that connection, that's what they used as a leverage piece.
Amazing. That's a great background to start off your marketing journey with. So now, obviously, you run Real-Time Result. What made you switch? And what's some of the more memorable moments? And also, I guess, piggybacking off that, what makes Real-Time Result different, say, perhaps from other marketing companies and agencies?
Yeah, so one of the things that I identified when I was working for one of the petroleum companies was that using a lot of those agencies, I realized that the cost of using those agencies was very high.
They're expensive. I've seen them.
Expensive.
They're crazy high.
They are crazy high. And also in terms of being able to measure results, there was always a bit of a grey area there. And what I realised was a small and medium business can't operate like that. They need to run effective campaigns that are measurable, and they must work. At the end of the day, they don't have big budgets to spend in hope that it was going to work. So I realised that there was a need there for smaller and medium businesses, which is where Real-Time Results was born.
Love it. Fantastic. And how long have you been doing Real-Time Results for?
Last 7 years.
Last 7 years. Yeah. Brilliant stuff. So marketing comes in all different shapes and sizes. Can you share with us and the audience out there some of the more memorable marketing pieces that have stuck in your mind?
So in terms of ones that I've seen over the years, growing up here in Australia, one of the biggest ones, and it's not necessarily with a commercial benefit, but one of the biggest ones was in healthcare here in Australia. And anti-smoking has always been a big thing for Australian healthcare. And I've definitely noticed that the marketing that I saw when I was a kid has had a massive impact on the number of people you see smoking cigarettes in the street today. This is a massive difference. So growing up, there was a particular campaign where there was a sponge that was wrung out into a glass jar or a beaker. And in that beaker, there was this black liquid, and that sponge was representative of human lung. And that black liquid that came out was representative of all the chemicals and tar and all the buildup that would happen for a lifetime of smoking. So
it was a very big scare campaign to just shock people to not to smoke anymore.
Massively. And there were certainly other angles that they chose with different campaigns, but that was one that really stuck with me, and it's that really pushed on that emotional button of fear and fright.
It's interesting that you use the word emotional because there's many different types of marketing products, ideas, medium channels that specifically are utilized to press those emotional buttons. For example, City Kings. This is totally different as an example to the one that you were talking about. I'm a bit of a City Kings fan. I attend probably more than half their games on any given year. And most years they have Hungry Jacks as a sponsor. They got this brilliant marketing stunt where if the opposing team misses 2 free throws in a row, everyone in the crowd gets a free cheeseburger. And it's incredible because the knowledge of getting a cheeseburger just hypes up the crowd. Basketball, unlike other games where the crowd does have a big role to play in the outcome of a game. So if the crowd boos hard enough, waves their hands hard enough to distract the opposing team player from hitting their free throws, it can actually happen. And it has happened on 4 occasions in my time where I did indeed cheer hard enough to get a free cheeseburger. And it's brilliant stuff.
Yeah, smart.
It is
very clever, very engaging.
Oh, it is. Some of the Australian marketing stunts are brilliant stuff. Another one I saw was, I think last year, Amazon Prime. They had this activation where they simply wanted everyone to be a subscriber to Amazon Prime. So they had this one on Darwin Harbor, I think it was around October, and they decided to have everyone who shows them either an Instagram or a social media account where they forwarded or hashtagged their Amazon Prime to all their friends and family. And once they showed them to the staff on duty, they were given a free spin of a wheel. The free spin of a wheel gave them either a free promotional mug, or it gave them a free Amazon Prime Echo speaker, or it gave them some months for free or subscription-wise. And the queues were epic. Everyone wanted them. I wanted to go home, my daughter and my son, they wanted to say, hey, Dad, we got to queue up to get this stuff. And indeed, we got both the mug, and we also got the Amazon speaker as well, which was incredibly generous, and actually signed up, so it worked.
It did. Yeah, I like the idea around gamification of different campaigns and that, because it really builds the excitement and anticipation.
Oh, 100%. It really creates engagement. On to a different topic. If you were, actually, it's the city way to introduce, if you were a marketing manager, you are a marketing manager, and if you were given a kitty of $1 million and you were given the task to help a startup, their software, promote their service, how would you go about spending the $1 million? This is a brand new company. You have to spend it within a month. The criteria is it cannot be spent on, say, account managers or sales managers. It has to be purely media. What would the breakdown be in your eyes for you to get the best results, especially in a market like Australia, which can be quite competitive?
Yeah, definitely. Assuming that all the research has been done and you've figured out who the target audience is and exactly who you want to go after, I think that's the most important thing to do first. And then figuring out, what are their pain points and what you're going to solve and how you're going to resonate with them. So figuring that out first. And then if you've got $1 million to spend off the back of that, I think any medium where you can target people on a one-to-many basis, I think is
one-to-many basis. That's an interesting concept. Share with me a bit more about what you mean there.
Yeah. So if I'm advertising online and I'm looking to sell one-to-many, that means I'm trying to get a whole bunch of people in a room at once or a virtual room. So these days, webinars are a really effective sales tool. So I'd be certainly exploring that and spending a lot of money on advertising to get people into that channel. And I think physical is really important. So we spoke a little bit off air around some of the different marketing tactics and different channels to use. So one of the things that I get in my inbox, and I'm sure you do, and I'm sure anyone that's tuning in does, is so many automated email messages around selling, SEO services and web design.
Oh, I get them a lot. My LinkedIn, I don't check my LinkedIn inbox because I get 10 on any given day. Over the course of a week, I get 70.
There you go. And you imagine how many thousands that would be in your email inbox that have already been rejected that you're not actually seeing. It's incredible. So a real point of difference is being able to send physical merchandise or physical products or even just sales letters, I think is a really, really effective tool.
So it's old school. We're starting to get back a few decades now.
Absolutely. And the reason why is because everyone takes the easy option these days and they go to, okay, well, how am I going to send something out en masse? So I go to my CRM or my email provider, I upload a list and just blast it out there. And that sort of generic approach is very dated and people are they're sick of it, really. There's a lot of noise. And they just overlook it. At the end of the day, it's just overlooked and it becomes another 1 in a million. And I think a really, really simple way to stand out is to be able to send something physical, because I know that when I get something up in the office that lands on my desk that's physical, I'm 100% going to open it and I'm going to 100% take notice of it, and whether it's relevant or not, that's the next stage. But I'm at least going to open it and have a good look at it. It's going to capture my attention, which at the end of the day, attention is what lands.
Absolutely. So $1 million,
Yep.
percentage spend breakdown, where would it go? Would it be 50% in creating these memorable experiences so that they have something physical, whether it be a letter or a product? Or would it be, and the remainder being not to generate things that are familiar,
Yep.
a brand name that is familiar? Where would you allocate it percentage-wise?
So it depends where the particular market are paying attention at the moment. So let's use an example. Let's say you're selling a new vehicle that you've brought into the country. You're an overseas producer and you brought it into Australia. I'd be certainly looking at online. I think online would be a massive channel to look at, and you'd spend a small amount of money testing advertising campaigns. You might spend 10% doing it online, and you might do a 10% activation in the middle of the city where you bring it in and get people to have a look at it, get people to essentially test drive it and that kind of thing. And then off the back of that, you can then spend the rest of the money where you find it working. So test and learn, figure out what works,
Right.
and then spend the remainder in there. So really doubling down on what you've been doing.
Right, that makes a lot of sense. And hypothetically, if we had the same question, but it's flipped around, this is a legacy company. This company has been possibly around for decades. Would the marketing strategy and the marketing spend be any different from a company that's a startup compared to a company that has been around for potentially decades?
I think the fundamentals don't change. I think figuring out and testing and learning exactly where you need to put your marketing budget remains the same. So yes, for particular companies, going all in terms of online would be their way forward. It might be an online-based business. It might be an educate company, for instance, that only delivers online. And they might want to test and learn, certain billboards and things like that, or go to particular campuses that are already established and try to get their message out that way physically. But I don't think it changes the fundamentals of how you're going to spend that money.
That's really interesting. I never realized that such a strategy existed where you test and then you find out exactly what works and then essentially go to town on that channel to just maximize it. Is that typically the experience of most marketing companies and most marketers out there where they test and then deploy? Or are there variations to this strategy and techniques?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of variations. I mean, it takes a lot of grit and it takes a lot of persistence to test a lot of different methods and figure out what actually works. Because at the end of the day, I mean, if it's not measurable, it's not something that I generally support in terms of the marketing that I do for my clients. So I can see the numbers, my clients can see the numbers. And for instance, I mean, there's an accounting firm that I work with, a really good accounting firm, and I might have created 50 different LinkedIn advertisements last year. And that's, again, just testing, learning. And 45 of those didn't work. 5 of them did. And the 5 that did, you just keep fueling with your marketing spend. You keep channeling your budget that way.
Amazing. Fantastic. I learned something new. Well, thank you, Nathan. Really appreciate your time and some of your insights. I'll have Nathan's details on the bottom of this link as well. So if anyone wants to connect with Nathan by LinkedIn or any other Medium channel, that would also be available. And everyone, thank you for listening to our latest episode of our podcast. Stay tuned for more new and exciting topics as well as guests onto our channel.
Thank you.
Thank you. 50.